made on government. So you find out that the private sector is the only person putting the money in. And it's all part of the reasons why we had Vodafone leaving the market. And so that also has its own challenges and its own risk. And so the thing you want to do, the sweet spot you want to find is where you create a situation where government has good take coming out of there, and then the investor also has a good trade-off. But the important thing that for us that we believe should happen is that even as you have these two trade-offs, how do you ensure that the country itself also benefits? How do you ensure that the communities are developed? Let me give you a typical example. In 2025, 3 mines in the Takwa area. So this is Goldfields, this is Anglo Gold Eduaprim, and then Ghana Manganese, paid 5.1 billion cedis to government as taxes. Ask yourself how much of that went back into the Takwa district. This is mines only in the Takwa district. Another example, when Newmont sold to Zijin, government made $250 million out of that. How much of that went into the Achim community? So we need to, as we do all of the models that we run, if we want value retention, if we want development, we need to then also make sure that we're looking at it to see how do we ensure that as you do that, the communities also get the benefit. That's really very important. And again, the arguments are made and people throw numbers about Ghana. All we take out of mining is 5%. And so people will look at it. I returned from the National Labor Conference, and we're having some conversation with some of my friends from the TUC, and they say, so that we do the mining, and all Ghana is getting is 5%. And then he calculated how much revenue we had made, in the year, and he said, how much of that came to Ghana? And he calculated the revenue, and immediately looked at it and said, how much came? But he didn't look at the cost. Because again, from all of us, what we learned back in primary school, when you do cost price and sales price, you have to take the cost price out of it before you be able to get your profit. So you need to look at that. And so let's look at the data. So in terms of the rent shares that goes to government, if you take non-African economies, the US is doing 23%. Canada is doing 30.8 or 31. Australia 33. Peru is doing 34. But again, it is good to also compare ourselves. Though some of these destinations have the maturities that we have, to compare ourselves also with other African countries. So again, Cote d'Ivoire is doing 50%. Guinea is doing 51. South Africa is doing 53. Burkina is doing 54. Tanzania is doing 55. Ghana was straddling between 51 to 57. Today's gold price, it means we'll be paying around 11%, royalties. We'll be paying 1.54, we'll be paying 1% GSL. 1% GSL translates into 1.54% royalties. So you add that to that. Before you go and add your 35% CIT, before you add government's free carried interest of 10%, before you then add the fact that if dividends are paid, there's a withholding tax also on that. So you need to take all of that into consideration to be able to find, what government stake is. So currently the way our framework is, we're not competitive. Because again, bear in mind, it's not only foreign investors. So there are Ghanaian investors who also will be looking at it to say, if I invested my money in here, what is going to be the return for me? So when we're taking our decisions about how, we structure our mining industry, we need to have that at the back of our mind, that how do we do it in such a way that the returns, that comes to government is great. We are able to use that to develop our country. But then the investor who's also putting his money in there also, makes something so that they would be able to bring their income. The only reason that 3 trillion ounces of gold is not up yet is because you need investors. Even if you get, we get our locals to also own the mines, which is a good thing to do, which is something we should promote. They also have to go and look for funding. And you'll not be able to raise all the funding on Ghana, here. So you have to go elsewhere to go and raise it. If they go out going to raise investment and they believe that you are taking, where the jurisdiction you're taking into comparatively government takes is disproportionate, you would not be, they will struggle. And you will find out that they would factor that into the cost of capital that they would give to them. Now, another thing about it is that even when the revenues come, how are we sharing them? So you make money from corporate income tax, free carried interest, the growth and sustainability levy, then the royalties as well. All of that goes into the mineral income holding account. 78% now goes into the consolidated fund. 2% goes to MIF. 20% goes to the Mineral Development Fund. And then when we split that, only 8% reaches the local authorities and the local assemblies. So Nana, that's what the situation is. This is what the situation currently is, only 8%. But unfortunately, even some of the assemblies, when this money goes to them, how is that able to transform the communities when some of them use that for Nsawa? They use that in paying Nsawa. You know what Nsawa is? So that's the reason why for us at the chamber, one of our pushes to say that we've gotten to a point where we should be asking that at least 30% of the royalties should be going into these communities. And it should not just go into these communities. It should go into these communities where government then sets up some strategic pillars to say that when it goes into these communities, it should go into these pillars. So that once you do that, then you'll be able to see some development coming in. But when we have the situation where only 8% reaches it, there'll be a challenge. Then there's another challenge that you should see. That currently, majority of our mines, if you add small scale and all of that, 55.9% is the output that we do, but we contribute only 7% of royalties. And the reason is simple. The small scale sector last year contributed 52% of our output. So if the large scale sector contributed 48%, and they paid about 22 billion cedis, how much do you think that the small scale sector would have paid for the 52%? Any guess? No, I won't take your answer. Any guess? Any guess from anybody? So if small scale, again, and you know the proportion now, we all learned in school, 52. If more, less divide. If you calculate that, you should be expecting the 25 that Ahmed is saying, straight proportion. But they paid 500,000 cedis. 500,000 cedis is what the 52% contributed. So we need to do some formalization there, again, so that we are able to extract maximum value. So yes, Gold Board is getting a lot of the gold. We'll be able to block the smuggling. But how much are they also contributing to the physicals? When we also know that in terms of the Daman Road that has been broken, the Samara floods that have come there, all of that is coming because of, artisanal mining that is not being done properly. So we need to watch that as well. Again, the interesting thing is that during the gold rush in California, it said that it is those who sold the gins, the pickaxes, the shovels, they made more money than those who dig the gold. That's why we're saying that for Ghana to retain maximum value, it is not only the ownership of mines that we should be looking at. How do we own the entire value chain? So that now we've done local content very well, and we thank the Minerals Commission for that. We thank the Chamber also in promoting that. Very recently, together with the Standard Authority, we have put in the standards for grinding media. So soon, a lot more of our mines will be buying grinding media. So that we don't just take that 47% and take it to China, take it to the US, take it to Europe and go and import it. But we are able to retain a lot of the value. Those are some of the conversations that we need to do. And so our ambition should transcend beyond owning mines. We must own the engineering firms, the technology providers, logistics, financial institutions that surround them. That is what would give us a lot more of the value. So we propose the hub and spoke value web so that you have the mine in the middle, the engineering, interestingly, contract mining, equipment maintenance, that is beginning to happen. We are seeing a lot of that happening. The issues around digital technologies. There's a lot of automation now getting into mining. There's a lot of AI being used, a lot of big data. And that offers us an opportunity. So the mine digitization, how do we produce that from Ghana? There's a lot of our young people who are in the ESG management software. The logistics that are surrounding it. And that's why for me, I would give Zen, major applause. That Zen was able to start, providing fuel to the mining sector. And now it's moved on and it's now listed. And people, I'm sure some of you are here, and you all own shares. Please, let's give them a round of applause. This is how we can turn mining to become strategic. So how much more of the Zens can we build? So the energy infrastructure, you have Gensa also in there. They started off providing power to some of the mining firms. Now they've gone to Cote d'Ivoire. They've set up a 300 megawatts, power plant in Cote d'Ivoire. This is a local firm that has been able to do that. How do you produce a lot more of that? The financial services. What can we do to ensure that our pension funds also get investment in there? One of the things that we believe should happen, if you go into the Toronto Stock Exchange, a lot of the juniors, they raise funds from there. Can we also get to the point where when a mine, wants to raise capital, they raise it from our stock exchange? When you have some of these exploration projects, we're able to raise some funds. The issues around small scale, medium scale, can we list the proper ones also on the stock exchange and be able to raise some capital from there as well? And then the whole issues around manufacturing and fabrication. So I mentioned the issues around grinding media, which are the steel balls. Another thing that we as a chamber were pushing on, we've been working with Professor Kuma, when he was at UMAT, and we continue to do, is activated carbon. Activated carbon is charcoal, produced out of palm kernel shell and then coconut shell. Those have been done. They've been tested in the labs, in the mines, and some of them perform even better than the imported one. Can we start producing that? That's over a $50 million per annum budget in Ghana. Can we start manufacturing that? So by the time the last ounce of gold is taken out of the ground, we are able to replace that industry with activated carbon. I was talking to the 24-hour economy. I hear there are some people coming to do palm. Can we look at all of that so that we do that and make sure that, the mind sits in the middle as the catalyst and is driving all of this? So it is really important that we use mining as that to be able to grow these other industries. And again, this build them. So we should invest in all these universities that we have, from UMAT to UNAIR to KNUST, and be able to build the capacities that we can build of our people, the things that we can. Let's do that. Can we create an underground mining academy in Obuasi, for example, and a surface mining academy in Tapa? Can we do that, so that it becomes a critical hub for research? Most of these projects, the challenges that the mines have, that they would have to bring people from outside. Are we able to get companies like Mark Partners and Co., to be able to provide those solutions? These are the things that we should be able to build. Develop ESG research and apprentices programs for our ASMs and all of that. Can we build that in Ghana, the places where we have a comparative advantage? Those that we are not able to build, are we able to borrow? Go into Canada, they export mining, finance, and exploration capital. Go into Canada, they export mining, finance, and exploration capital. Can we as Ghana also start exporting, tech? Can we as Ghana also start exporting, technologies, digital mining technology, ESG solutions, and digital mining technology, ESG solutions, and our young men and women who are coming here build their capacity so that they are also we are able to export them to be able to make, to grow our country. So again, the same build, borrow, and buy paradigm, we should also apply it. This thing where you contribute 52% of Ghana's output and you pay only 500,000 is something that would not be. So we need to build the capacity of artisanal miners and help them develop safer technologies. For us at the chamber, we are investing. We've started some research into building a model that transforms the ASM. Because we believe that it's not only the stick that will solve our problems, we also need to look at the carrot. So then once you do that, then we borrow best practices, get the OEMs to partner, learn from it, and then be able to help them in the way they do their things. And then are we able to get the MIFs and all of that to be able to invest into some of these ASMs? Some of the models that the large-scale mines are using is that the trust funds that they set up, the plan is to see how they use that to put money into a well-structured mining operation so that even when the interest that comes out of that goes back again into the community. So the formalization is very important, and we need to invest in doing that because we definitely need to bridge that gap, and we need to ensure that Ghana does not become characterized with the challenges that comes with the ASM because of the lack of responsible sourcing and the whole issues around. We've seen all the challenges that are facing us. We need to fix that. So our plan should be to be able to transform by 2025. It should not be focused on only the ounces that are extracted, the tons that are exported, but it should be based on the industries that we create, the skills that are developed, and the technologies that we build, the capital that is retained, and African grow. So just to wrap up, the priorities for us is the fact that we need to enhance local manufacturing, develop the domestic supply chains. And this one, the chamber, we're not just saying them. Even in terms of refinery, before this GANRAP thing came, we had gone to run refinery to try and see how we can get that up. So we need to speed that up. Let's strengthen our revenue management. We believe that this situation where we are giving an annum and the assembly is only 8% does not work. 30% should go back into the community. And we also believe, please join Nana in clapping for the 30%. Why are you not clapping? So we also believe that apart from that, we should learn from the Petroleum Revenue Management Act that then directs how we spend the windfalls that are coming from mining, and then have another one that directs that as well. I've been told that most of the gold that we currently are benefiting from, it was developed by people on horsebacks. So if now we have all of these national service persons that we are training, is it possible now to say to them, when they get out of national service, let's go and put them into the bush, get them to do exploration working together with some senior engineers. As we do that, we'll be able to build the capacity so that because we know where all our resources are, that 3 trillion ounces are, when you get investors that are coming in, then you are able to then ask for, because you have also put your investment in there. So thank you very much. You've closed my slide. There was a last point that I have forgotten. Okay, so I think it tells me that my time is up. Yes. Thank you very much.
And all the talk about mining has gingered us. Thank you, engineer. We will have to take a short break, like 5 minutes, and then after the break, we'll then do a panel discussion on what engineer has said. So mining as a catalyst for development is why we are here. So we'll take a short break, and then after that, we will come back. 5 minutes break. There's coffee and tea, and there's no cocoa anyway because I hear the cocoa put us to sleep. There's coffee and tea. Please move to the left side of me, grab a cup, and let's come back in 5 minutes. If you want to use the washrooms, please just walk out on the left, or behind you, you get access to the washrooms. Thank you. Where's the people? Can you move this? Can you take this one? Wait. Inside. Put it here. Put it here.
school teacher, and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC Gets Fund and other scholarship, and then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came in. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents. I'm working on whole body vibration. In our part of the world, a few preliminary research showed that. And that is very alarming, looking at Ghana's contribution to mining. I applied because I knew that. Okay.
I don't famous.
Very easy access into the mines.
I'm going to try my pictures. Let's send it them.
My dad is a basic school teacher, and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC Gets Fund and other scholarship, and then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came in. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents.
Thank you. Thank you.
My dad is a basic school teacher, and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC Gets Fund and other scholarship, and then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents.
My research is on the topic, the use of
by what time?
Artificial oxygen carriers
I hope so.
Enhance good cyanidation. And basically, it is where I'm trying to use a new type of chemical, which is able to dissolve a lot of oxygen within the system, and then it is able to enhance.
Let me add a wahala. I need money. I need money.
Carry out my research.
Your people know. I have about five invoices outstanding.
Progressing.
And some more than a month. Minia, let's say. That table, I'll update it and then send it back to you.
When I started UMAT, I got admission in 2019. Then I worked for 2 years before I was able to apply. So I stayed home for 2 years after SHS. So during my second year, my mom started. having financial constraint because she's a single mom.
A good person
we
probably
need
right online.
assignments.
Yes,
We're not able to
Thank you.
concentrate because we're thinking of where to get the next school.
What the neighbor Hane? Ah, okay. Yeah, and call the neighbor and say. Okay.
Coming from a broken home and being among 8 children. And
Okay. Okay.
my dad is a basic school teacher and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC gets fund and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came in. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents.
Okay. Since time and so on until the application right now, see down.
My dad is a basic school teacher and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC gets fund and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came.
Adam was here now. You're not all called. They are too share. Now you must sign it.
The burden on my parents.
Into no open export license from Goldboy. So was self-financing. Then you transfer it into a normal they are converted. Yeah, yes.
My dad is a basic school teacher and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to.
So this time around, how would your questionnaire check? Are you going to go one by?
I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology. They took loan. Yes. And it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC gets fund and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents. My dad is a basic school teacher and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC gets fund and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents. My dad is a basic school teacher and my mom sells Ghanaian beans. Yes, so when I had admission to the University of Mines and Technology, they took loan. Yes, and it got to a time they were not getting the loan again, so I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships. GMPC gets fund and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Nananum, welcome back from the 5 minutes break. So we now go into the panel session for the rest of the day. Hello? Please, everybody, find a seat. So, as you can see on the screen, we have seasoned panelists to discuss this. But this panel will be moderated by someone who has over 30 years experience in mine project development and operations, including sustainability and corporate affairs. He is the Vice President of Asanko and Vice President and Managing Director of Asanko Gold Mine. He has held several senior mining positions all over the industry, including Anglo Ashanti. But his key is that he holds a BSc in electrical engineering. He's an electrician working with the mines. He got that electrical degree from Kwame Nkrumah University of Mines, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He also has an MBA in business administration. And he's also the president of the Ghana Chamber of Mines. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we welcome our moderator, Engineer Frederick Atakuma.
All right. Good morning. Is it morning? Yeah, it's still morning. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've had a very interesting morning so far with the contributions from Minerals Commission and in particular with the presentation by the CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Mines. What is absolutely clear is that just mining and exporting within the context of value retention and development is not enough. There are some real opportunities out there we should be looking at. And I think that is what this panel will be discussing. So we'll be focusing a lot on what has been shared by Ken in his presentation. And mining is not an enclave. Mining operates within an ecosystem of very key players, a number of key players. And today, we're actually privileged to have all of them in the room with us. So I'd like to invite the panelists to join me. First on the list is Mr. Richard Nunekpeku. Richard is the Deputy CEO of the Gold Board. The Gold Board is definitely the biggest thing in Ghana now when it comes to mining. So Richard, you're welcome. Okay, all right, please sit. The next person I'd like to invite is our very own CEO of the Chamber of Mines, Dr. Ken Ashigbe, please. That would be followed by my own good friend and brother, Mr. Sampobi, MD of Anglo Gold Ashanti of Wasima. And then we also have Mr. Emmanuel Losefri-Mensa, who is the Group CFO for Gold Coast Refinery. We're talking about local refining. So he's here with us. And then on the civil society side, they keep us all on the straight and narrow, as it were. We have Mrs. Mabel Akwe, who is the policy lead, Minerals and Mining, African Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Welcome, madam. And last but not the least is our very own Mr. Theo Echampo, who is I believe is the advisor to the Minister of Finance. So on the policy side, he will be sharing with us what government's thinking. So this is a really solid panel that we've got here to tell us how we can actually determine a pathway when it comes to strategic mining and value retention. So I think I will start, maybe let me start with Ken. Ken, on the back of what you just shared with us in your presentation. You know, when we talk about mining value retention, you know, how does that impact in practical terms Ghana's own economic transformation agenda? The reason is we've said strategic mining. Strategic mining means starting with the end in mind. So we are not just caught responding to commodity price swings and all of that, but we have a clear destination we want to get to. We have a clear understanding of what mining must do for this country. You know, so how do we actually, in practical terms, you know, leverage mining to enhance Ghana's economic transformation agenda?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So again, I think in your opening, you talked about the fact that mining exists within the value chain. So it is important that we start looking at the entire value chain so far as mining is concerned. And I also like the fact that you talk about that we should be looking at the end game. What is it that we want to achieve? So how do we want to see Ghana become? How do we ensure that our developmental agenda, for example, is aligned to the things that we do in mining? So currently, we have all this talk about the 24-hour economy. If you really look at that document, I think for the first time, what we've done is that we've gone back all the way to Kwame Nkrumah's development plan and taken all the development plans, including even the one done by the last government, the whole Ghana Beyond Aid and all of that, and we've put all of that together. So how do we use, because that is the end goal that we have in mind, how do we then use mining as a catalyst to develop all of that? And we all know that our country, one of the things that we've become is that we've become an import-dependent country. And there's no country that has developed when, you know, your agriculture, your industrialization is not working. So if you want that to work, how do we then leverage on mining? And again, looking at that, you then would have to then, because one of their pillars is Grow 24. You know, in terms of the agriculture, if you want to industrialize your agriculture, where is the demand sitting? Which industry currently has demand that is sitting? And it's not only demand that has money that backs it. And it's not only Ghanaian demand, because again, where we sit, some will tell you that Ghana is a gold mine because of the amount of gold that is, but the geology is not limited to only Ghana, it's the whole of West Africa. So if even you take activated carbon and you decide that you want to develop your palm plantation, your coconut plantation, you can have mining as the catalyst, as the anchor clients that will be able to take that for you. So how do we build our agro industries? How do we build our other industries on the back of that? And in doing all of that, how do we also, again, you would have to look at your build, borrow, and buy. Which of them are elements that our people can do themselves, build themselves? Which of them are we able to do partnerships to be able to do so that we can develop these industries? And again, for me, the big one is about the fact that our core to that is our people. How do we develop the expertise to make sure that we are productive in our mining? We're able to do the new mining, but not only that, be able to export that, be able to export all of these talents back. But when you're going to do this, there has to be synergies, not only in mining, not only in your trade policy, it even goes to your finance policy. How does Bank of Ghana do it in such a way that when you export these talents, they are able to then bring their monies back in, and they know that they will be able to get some interest on that. Because if you don't make that attractive, then you don't get to benefit from that. So it's important that we situate mining as the entire value chain to be able to then transform the various elements and be able to move us from the lower middle income country into the first income country, and we will be able to do that. For me, a critical place is this whole issue about the digital gap. One of the places that mining can help us bridge the digital gap is that digital technology is also coming into mining. And we have a competitive advantage when it comes to that. Our young people, you see the businesses that we're building in the digital space. Are we able to let them reorient their mind into mining? What are the needs in mining? What are the opportunities in mining? And in the process, help them to develop these technologies back home in Ghana that they can supply to the mining industry, not only in Ghana, but in West Africa and globally.
Okay, thank you. I think you raised two issues. There's a policy dimension, there's the broader value chain conversation. But I would start with the gold board, Richard, first to understand, given what Ken has described. Gold board, last week we signed a 30% of take from the large scale mines, which effectively gives you, if I even say the large scalers are producing close to 3 million ounces a year on the back of last year, 1 million ounces. That's what you're going to get, ballpark. So beyond just purchasing gold and working with the refinery to, get it for the international market, how can the gold board contribute, a lot broadly towards value retention in the country?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to use this opportunity once again to thank the Chamber for the constructive nature in which we negotiated and agreed on the historic 30% gold output purchases, which starts tomorrow anyway. We appreciate the contribution of the Chamber and its members, and we want to publicly say thank you.
You can applaud the Chamber for this.
for working with us on that. For us at Gold Board, value retention is dear to us, and we understand value retention as value addition, and that is anchored on our regulatory mandate. So if you look at the Gold Board Act, which establishes the Gold Board, value addition is a critical mandate requirement of the things we do at the Gold Board. And we've been able to more or less translate the provisions of the Act into action through various interventions. One key intervention is the regulation and the licensing arrangement that we have for the sector. So largely, yes, we are known for buying and selling gold, but within the value addition value chain, we also regulate how refineries operate and how jewelry fabrication and jewelry making is also done locally. So we have a very transparent licensing process, which enable businesses within the refining and jewelry fabrication value chain to apply to be licensed to perform these functions on our behalf, because the Act gives us that mandate to carry out those activities, but we do it through the licensing of third parties. So that is one aspect of what we do. The other aspect of what we've been doing to translate the value addition objectives into reality is to now begin to support the entities that we license. So for the refineries that we license, we've begun a program where, as at now, we've signed 2 refinery licenses with 2 local refinery companies to supply them up to a ton of the ASM gold that we buy. Yes, our primary mandate is to buy ASM gold. And now with the onboarding of large-scale mines and having the opportunity now to buy gold from the last conversations, where we are beginning to dedicate this gold that we buy under this program solely for local refinery. Our objective is to use the opportunity to build local capacity for these local refineries and put them on the track to becoming LBMA accredited refineries over the next, as far as large-scale mining outputs are concerned. These refineries will be able to attain the LBMA requirement of proof of where the gold is coming from. And we are happy to note that some of these refineries have taken the initiative of also engaging in their own partnerships. Currently, we have Gold Coast Refinery having a technical partnership with RAN Refinery, the only LBMA accredited refinery on the continent, to be able to build capacity. And we are very much involved in that process. We only don't provide them the gold, we engage on how we can translate some of the responsible mining and responsible sourcing objectives under the OECD guidelines to even the ASM sector. So we are doing a lot with the refineries on that front. Also, we are looking at the
jewelry fabrication industry. And Gold Board has a subsidiary company called the Gold Board Jewelry. And over the last 1 year, we've invested significantly into that company in terms of building the capacity of the company to be able to produce local jewelries and fabricate ornaments and produce gold coins to international standard. Our investment is geared towards positioning the company in a way that the company can use modern technology. So we are supporting the company set up new production unit. We've invested significantly into rebranding the showroom and also advertising and marketing of the products of the company. So if you look at all these things that we are doing and also tying it into the vision of His Excellency, the President, John Dramani Mahama, that has given us a charge to ensure that by 2030, all gold outputs that are produced local, conversation around how we can more or less situate new refining capacities within the gaps that we have currently. Yes, it is true that we have some local refineries, but if you look at the total output of the sector in the north of 200 metric tons a year, what we have locally will not be able to refine all that gold. So it means that we need to be looking at new refining capacities. And we began conversation with interested private sector to be able to site new refineries that have the capacity to refine ultimately all the gold that we'll be able to produce, and also then retain some of the value locally, value in terms of the silver that will now be made available for the local fabrication industry, value in terms of the taxes and the revenues that the refineries will generate locally, and ultimately to be able to settle the long held dispute as to what is the true asset values of the gold that we export outside of this country. So the Gold Board is committed to these initiatives as a way of translating our objective and mandate of value addition as we've been mandated by the Gold Board Act.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. So I think you've latched on to 2 or 3 broad pillars. I mean, being the aggregator, if you like, and then number 2, building the reserves of the country. But I think what I particularly like within the context of this conversation is the downstream side you are referring to, where you're talking about jewelry and all of that. So that's great. So I think to deliver that, the question of the refineries themselves comes up. So I'd like to move to Emmanuel from Gold Coast Refinery. Refining, given my short life in the industry, typically is the margins are what I call wafer thin. Refineries usually don't make a lot of money. So what are the key commercial requirements that you have looked at in ensuring that we can establish a sustainable and competitive refining industry in Ghana? That's one. And then I'll add on a second question. How can you leverage the refinery to stimulate broader development, within the space?
Thank you, Engineer Frey. And good afternoon, Nana, and good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I think, as Mr. Richard mentioned, refining actually, if you look at the cost of refining, either as a flat fee or as a percentage of the value of gold, anything between 0.3% to 0.55%, depending on where gold prices are, you possibly won't start. But then you're looking at an industry that has, as Ken mentioned, that has a production profile of 30 years and above. And if you consider not starting at 0.5%, for example, you will never get to the point where possibly it will now be matured enough for you to pay 0.2. So it is important that we look at how that midstream industry adds to the value chain. A key commercial requirement is obviously the licensing regime, for example. Refining requires a lot of equipment investment. And so you want to deal in an organized sector. And for that matter, it's no wonder that the country has had refineries way back, some dating back 10 years ago, and yet not really being active because there wasn't that regime ensuring that it's linking supply into the refineries. And thank God, Gold Board was created. I'm from Gold Coast Refinery, and as much as I know, whilst in my banking days, Gold Coast Refinery was set up sometime in 2016 and never really had any refining activity until 2025. So a licensing regime that actually ensures consistent supply to the refinery is actually coming to you also undertaking responsible processes and ethical way of refining. And that is very important. Then let me talk about infrastructure, for example. Refining requires a lot of, let me talk about infrastructure, for example. Refining requires a lot of energy. Honestly, a lot of energy. Since we started refining, I've seen my energy cost gone through the roof more than 5 times. And I think once we want to industrialize, Ken mentioned the initiatives of the 24-hour economy, we need to really look at energy supply into key industry areas that we want to use to create a catalyst for growth in this economy. And we should think beyond, you mentioned the Gensa example. That is a key example of private sector participation in energy supply. We should think beyond ECG, I think. The roofs of many industries are there to receive solar investment. We don't necessarily need to invest in that solar energy supply, but a holdco, for example, can come into that space if, again, there is that regulatory framework that promotes that private sector investment, coming into partnership with industry to supply the needed energy at affordable cost. So that is very important. And the last point I would like to mention in relation to the commercial requirement is expertise. Thank God what Prof. Kumar had done with people coming out of UMAT. Fantastic people, I must say. I mean, to the extent that even though we've not had significant refining activities over the years, these are people, students that when Rand met them, they were really surprised. And virtually almost everybody working at Gold Coast Refinery, for example, Rand said, these are people who can easily work in Rand Refinery. And that tells me what UMAT is doing with produce them. In this country, we've got the chemist students who are able to do these things very well. So it's time we need to look at the value chain and not just talk about it, but actually implement it. Another thing we need to look at is the supply, the volumes of the mine gold coming out. Across West Africa, it's about 550 tons of production per annum. Now, if you take the lead country, China, and Russia, the second producing country together, West Africa's production alone accounts for about 70% of the top 2. What this means is that significant production in West Africa facilitates the location of refineries here. You can't have over 550 tons production per annum across West Africa, and you are not boosting off an LBMA accredited entity. So the journey has started. The roadmap is very clear towards establishing an LBMA refinery in Ghana to take advantage of what Gold Board is doing in Ghana, and also to position Ghana in the broader context of West Africa, so that whilst we see ourselves on the supply side of production, we can actually influence the market.
Okay, thank you. So West Africa is definitely the current frontier when it comes to gold across the globe. So you're absolutely right. I think we positioned in the right place. But I'd like to move to my good friend, the operator now, Sam. We've spoken about the refining side and all that, but I'll take you back to Ken's presentation where it was quite clear that in talking about value retention, The downstream side, the refining is one side of it, but possibly we could actually retain and develop a lot more value if we looked at the input side into our industry. So looking at Obuasi and the broader Ghanaian mining industry, what procurement categories do you believe offer the greatest opportunities when it comes to further localization, job creation, contributions to the local economy?
Thanks, Fred, and good afternoon, everyone. I think for me, the first question is, what are we solving for? If we get to understand what we're trying to solve for, but I get the indication that what we all want is local participation. How do we participate? How does mining translate into building industries? How does mining translate into jobs? If we don't necessarily align on this thing, we'll be talking past each other, but saying the same thing. The first thing that I always say is that if I take our value chain, let's take Obuasi, for example. You spend almost about operating costs is about 300 million. 50% of that sits in mining cost. And then about another 20 to 25% sits within processing. The rest is G&A, paying salaries and the likes. Now, how much of that really do you think we have is retained in Ghana? Not very much. Why do I say that? If I take mining, we practically, even though you might have a mining contractor, most of the things he's doing is actually perhaps labor high. The equipment coming from outside, everything that we do, we have to import. So I think our contractors, yes, local content is there, but we are majoring on a marginal game rather than the things we need to do. If I give a supplier to go and supply me maybe some items that I need for my production, and let's take it, let's say $20 million weight. He puts his margin on, that is $2 million. The rest of the 20 million, where does it go? Goes to other countries, the same people that we think they are taking our gold, or we think they are taking something from us. We end up going back to them. So the question is not about who owns the mine. To me, I don't think that's really the whole underlining this thing about the build, borrow, buy, framework. It is about how you've been deliberate about some of the value chains and retaining it. In Australia, do you know how much iron ore tons they move from Australia to China, India, and co? So they are not too worried about the raw material living, because you can't play in all the value chain. You need to be strategic enough to pick some of them and go through a series of progress. There's a lot of tons, over 300 million tons of iron ore leaves Australia every year from the Pilbara, between Roy Tinto and BHP. Why are they not complaining? It's because there are industries there that have decided to specialize. So those are the things that I believe we should focus on. A mine going to a local person or going to a foreign person doesn't create jobs. Anyone saying that if a mine comes to me, Sampobi, will mean that jobs should be created, that is not necessarily true. If Anglo Gold Ashanti have over 5,000 workers, and there's a change in hands, the person taking over will not increase the number of people to be hired by that. And by the way, most of our mines now, 100%, most of the mines now is being run by Ghanaians. And that's another journey that we've moved through. 30 years ago, every department in the mines was headed by expatriates. Now, you will struggle to see that in any industry. In Obuasi, Idraprim is 100% Ghanaian-led. Obuasi is almost 100%. I think only 1% of that. So that progress, we need to be able to celebrate that. And therefore, if we want to create more jobs within Ghana, it is about how do we bring that industry into Ghana? Instead of the person going out there to bring the things here, the manufacturing plant is here. If that happens, it means that it's employing people within Ghana. So we are building the economic pie. I would rather prefer having 10% of 10% of a bigger pie than 50% of a smaller pie. How do we grow the pie? For me, is the key one. And the first one for me is we've spoken about grinding media, which I think I like the fact that we've moved on that particular thing. How much of that are we retaining here? With that, if the local content directive is that all mining companies in Ghana should buy grinding media from a local supplier, or with a manufacturing plant here, not going to bring it from outside. With a manufacturing plant here, that means that he's employing more people. Employing more people means more payee tax. We're making the pie much more bigger. He's mentioned about activated carbon. So within that value chain, who is doing the analysis to know what are the things that we can deliberately capture? Sometimes it's just about 20% of the activities captures about 80% of the value that we have. So to me, it is more about, we've gone through contract mining. The other thing that I want to see is, yes, you have Liber, you have Caterpillar, we're buying trucks from them, all those things. What part of the component do we want them to come and assemble here? Because if that happens, then you have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers getting job. Otherwise, we will never transform the mining landscape. The other big part is financing. When we compare ourselves to South Africa and co, how many banks here in Ghana have a serious mining desk? Very few of them might have mining desks. So if you want to borrow, they have syndicates with other finance companies, banks outside the country that do the real data analysis. They become mediators. If I even talk about, if my good friend, environmental bonds that we have to raise, sometimes we find it difficult to even raise all the environmental liability bonds. So what are we doing to be able to capture this value? Because most of our value is actually going out, and not because we are not owning the mines, because we are not allowing the industries that provide inputs into the mining industry to be here. The Chinese, as an example, that's why they are able to spend a lot of money to buy a mine. Because they are not just looking at the real benefit of typical MPV and commercial discussion that we go through. They're looking at the value chain. When they buy your mine, the trucks are coming from China. The ball mill is coming from China. The safety boots is coming from China. The chemicals is coming from China. Everything is coming from China. So they've mapped it. So they are not just looking at one picture. They are looking at a broader picture. And that's what I think we are missing. So I want to see policies that actually stimulate industries being created here. And it shouldn't be everything. We just need to say, hey, even if it's a foreign direct investment, let it come. Build the industry. Give them whatever incentive for them to do that. Let them partner with Ghanaians. Give yourself a timeline, 5-10 years. Gradually, the least you could get is that you are going to employ Ghanaians, rather than this thing we have people sitting in the house. The last time we were looking for national service people, we were going to pick 70 people. Do you know how many people applied? Over 4,000. You see, so there's a lot of people who are not working. How do we take this industry to the next level and measure on the input and create industries rather than necessarily who owns the mine itself from financing? And my last point is, I think we should leverage on foreign direct investment. Okay, it doesn't mean that, for example, if I'm spending $300 million in my operating cost, what is capital return on investment? Most mining companies will sit between 15 to 30%. In a high gold price environment, that's where you're seeing this, super profit that we're recording. But in the normal course of things, when the gold price balances and equilibrium is established again, because going up, it will definitely come down. it sits between 15 to 30%. So if 15 to 30% of 30 million, 300 million is no more than 300 million. So the bigger portion is there. So I think we need to be able to focus on industries that provide inputs to the mines than who owns the mine.
Absolutely. So definitely what you're telling us is the input side offers a major strategic opportunity that we need to take advantage of. And I know you look at the numbers, if you look at mining revenues, typically about 70% of that goes directly into procurement, so that is where the focus should be. I think that would lead me on to Theo Champo, who comes in on the policy side, because you mentioned that along the way. So what is actually quite clear is that we are all talking about the same things, but someone is going to pull it together. I have a saying, which is either right or wrong, that there are certain things that only governments can do. Okay, so I almost would want to throw this into the camp of government, but obviously with the support of every key player sitting here. So what is Ghana's policy direction when it comes to, as it were, leveraging the mining industry to build industrial capacity in the country? That's number one. Number two, we are in an environment currently where there's a bit of a hard tension when it comes to mining in Ghana. The state wants more revenue. And the industry, I think Ken on the side of the chamber has been quite vocal about the fact that we need to look at how policy is developed in our bid to get a lot more out of the industry. So if we don't, we run the risk of deterring investment. What's really government's position on this, and how do we ensure that we don't have the situation where the whole issue of investment starts becoming problematic because of our policy posture? Okay, I know it's a loaded question, but bear with me.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I bring you greetings from the Ministry of Finance. I think for us, forums like these are important because it's not every day that we'll be sitting in the small rooms and having our discussions, but you get to see the industry as a whole. And then also, I think also we get to take feedback, and use that to improve the policy processes. I think we recognize fully the contribution of the mining sector to Ghana's economic development. Per the last time I checked some of the statistics, I think the sector accounts for about 8% of GDP. And with the current high gold prices, that could possibly even go up to about 10%, if not a little bit more, when the national accounts are produced by the statistical, service. I think also, if you look at the export side of the equation, currently gold and then the other minerals combined is driving close to about 65-70% of the export basket by value. And then you also have the related fiscal benefits in terms of revenue, in terms of jobs, and then in terms of the value chain. So, we recognize fully that this is an important sector for the Ghanaian economy. And to that extent, we need to do what is possible to support the sector, but also that fine balancing act of the revenues that are needed for other development priorities. It comes back to, in the literature, sometimes what we say, what is fair share? And there's a lot of debate around what is fair relative to what the investor is getting, and then, of course, what the government is also getting, right, at the end of the day. I know that there's been a lot of discussions around some of the new fiscal proposals and instruments that were passed around the price-based, royalties, and a number of the things that need to be done to support the sector, right, as a whole. I also recognize that really, at the end of the day, you still want to get more investments coming into the sector. Whether it is foreign or it is local, it is actually immaterial. What is important is that you're getting the investments coming in, number one. And then number two, you're giving them the right incentives to be able to produce that gold or manganese or whatever it is. And then number three, you're able to get the revenues that you want using the fiscal instruments that you have, whether it's royalties or it's corporate income tax or it is some windfall taxes. You can do all of that. But I think what is also clear to us is that the conversation goes beyond just revenue. The conversation is also a conversation about, and you've captured it very well, value retention and how you could do or leverage your sector to be able to get more or retain more of the value. And this is where two things are important. Your fiscal policy tools, and then of course also your industrial policy tools. And it goes to the question you asked that, yes, there are some things that only government can really do in trying to sort of give the carrot to industry to be able to provide. So on the value retention point, we see it across all strands of the value chain. So for us, it's not just really on the upstream side of the industry, but actually moving further midstream and even sort of downstream. So Richard spoke about all the work, the fantastic work that they're doing with Gold Board, to try and capture more. And then my boss here also spoke about what they're trying to do on the refining side, right? But he also mentioned a few things that I think is important to reemphasize, that beyond the incentives that you offer, certain preconditions also need to be right. And this is where the industrial policy bit comes in. The energy issues that he mentioned, the logistics issues that he mentioned, the training, right? The human resource issues, and I think that was from Mr. Pobi who mentioned all of that. All of these things need to be right for you to really drive that value conversation. So we don't, at the MOF side, necessarily see this just as a tax or an incentive issue, but rather you need to look at it more holistically, and in that sense, what you can offer from our side, but what we can also, together with other, government agencies and ministries, so Ministry of Trade, for example, on the contract side, for example, with the AG, ensure that you actually create that ecosystem that allows the value retention to happen, and to take place. So this is really sort of what is driving a lot of the decisions, right, that is taking place, that you do have a window of opportunity with the historic, call it gold high prices. But that is only a limited window. What you really want to do is to leverage that to fundamentally position the industry in a way that you're able to capture more of the value, right, in country. But that does not happen in and of itself. A lot of hard work needs to be done from both the finance side, but also working with other, agencies to give you the right, pegs to be able to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. But beyond the pegs, I mean, the issue now is somebody will have to pull it all together, which is where I am actually looking at government, so that we don't just talk about it, so that we can actually operationalize it. But the other dimension I would like you to look at before I move to my sister is we've had, like you indicated, a raft of policy initiatives over the past year. And, I can put it up, sliding scale royalty. There are issues, and I know Minerals Commission was here a minute ago, but there are issues around renewal of leases and all of that. The fact is, at this point in time, that scares the investment community, whether local or foreign. Because in our world, you need policy certainty, given the long-term nature of the investments that are made. And mining also requires capital, like we said, but it doesn't require any kind of capital. It requires patient capital. It's not an FMCG type industry. It's the kind of capital that is willing to wait for 5-10 years before it can recover. To what extent are these peculiarities of our sector informing the policies? Because currently, the way the investor community looks at it sees it as a bit of a negative.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate those concerns, and I can see where you're coming from, which in another life, I used to work as a consultant. So I can definitely see all of those concerns and all of that. I think it goes back to what I was saying around what is fair, right? That it takes two to tango. You need to have the investors, and you also need to have the state or the government on one side. We sit down, we discuss, we negotiate, and reach some sort of settlement around what is in the best interest of everyone. The nature of the discussions is such that, of course, the investor would come with a different set of objectives. The government may also have a slightly different set of objectives. And you need to meet each other halfway at some point in that sense, right? So really, I think what is then driving, call it the decision-making process, becomes to what extent we can meet each other, call it, halfway. What doesn't help is when, either party, call it, maybe takes a certain position that makes it difficult to, call it, negotiate or sit down and discuss in the first place. But I also think what doesn't also help is when a certain narrative is created as to the government or the state is anti-business or anti-industry. That I don't think is the case. I think really we're open to sitting down and discussing. Certainly from our side, from the ministry side, our doors are open. We can sit down and then we can discuss. But I feel that sometimes, there's a certain, call it, I wouldn't say misconception, but it looks like we're coming across each other from slightly different perspectives. But I think, yes, we can sit at the table and then iron these things out. And like I said very early on, we do recognize the contribution of the industry. We want to do more with the industry and for the industry. And we want to see more value retention. How to do it, the approach are the things that we can sit down and then, we can discuss.
Okay, thanks. So meaningful engagement is required between the two parties as we move forward on this. All right, so I think we come to ASAP now. You've looked at resource-rich countries across the continent and the world, etc. And I think, especially for Africa, many countries have struggled to retain, meaningfully retain value. How should we deal with this, given your independent position, given your understanding of the roles the different players, as it were, play within the sector? How do you see us, making the right changes to ensure that we can retain a lot more value here?
Thank you very much, Engineer Frederick Atakuma, so to speak, and also to the Chamber for this opportunity to be part of this great discussion. So from where we sit, I think Ghana is not peculiar when it comes to the value retention conversation and how to translate our resource wealth to shared prosperity. I think it's a challenge that saddles most resource producing economies across the region. But one of the, I think the issues have been mentioned. I wouldn't want to keep repeat it, but just for context for where I'm coming from, I'll pick it from where Dr. Theo Champon ended, the issue of industrial policy. So across the continent, you realize that mining sector or the extractive sector generally, the problem is not just with the mining or minerals, but even in the petroleum sector, they've been treated like an enclave, distinct from the rest of the economy. So it makes it difficult. That's why after over a century of mineral extraction, we still don't have the side linkages like having the services properly developed, and we are still outsourcing services from outside our countries. One thing that we have to bear in mind that I'm sure everybody knows is that the moment you pick imports, whether in good or services, that's the value you are exporting. And that's what we've not been able to address. How do we position our extractive industry as not as an enclave, but part of a broader industrial policy, such that we are developing our backward linkages? I'm talking about the supply chain here. I was listening to Mr. Pobi, right? He was talking about the share of procurement, and you mentioned 70%. So I wonder why, but when we come to our context, you realize that government's attention are usually on the fiscal take. How much taxes did the company pay? How much in royalties were paid? But not much question go into that 70%. How much was retained here? And there was an attempt to address this using our local content policy, which is comprehensive by all standards. But the mistake that we made, that we did not learn from the petroleum industry, is that our local content policy is fixated on ownership. The point that was made by Mr. Pobi on ownership is always about give contract to a company that has over 50% ownership, Ghanaian ownership. So that narrative denies us or undermine the opportunity that we can actually make from those economic linkages. So I've seen many mining companies publishing their fiscals, and you will see procurement. They will put huge figure there. Local procurement is this value, very huge. But the question or what we all fail to interrogate is that quantum that we are declaring that went to local contractors, from the local contractors' point of view, how many of those goods were actually sourced locally? So that is the big gap in our local content. So once Anglo Gold or Goldfield or Newmont is able to report to the Minerals Commission that I have about 70 or 80% of my procurement given to a local contractor, it's like the person has met the local content criteria. But what we have failed is that beyond that contractor, where were the goods sourced from? And I always use this Tonaton idea that our local content policy is gradually turning our contractors to Tonaton agents, right? They take the contract, then they import. And the moment you import it, that is the value gone. So many times when this discussion comes, my point is that you can't eat your cake and have it. Until we develop those side linkages, not just in Ghana, across the continent, where we were talking about activated carbon. It's not just relevant in the mining industry, it's relevant in other economic sectors. The point I'm driving here is that we don't have to have an industrial policy for the mining sector, no. We have to have a broader industrial policy that is actually linking all economic sectors, including the mining sector. So how do we now begin to extend our local content policies and regulations beyond ownership to building our manufacturing sectors? How do we look at our comparative advantage as a country? We know, I think one of the speakers made a point about Australia. What can we do better and produce competitively? Because one thing that we also miss many times is just manufacturing. But your ability to manufacture at a competitive cost does not guarantee that you will get market for it. If the price or the cost of production is so high, it brings back to the point on the elements driving the cost of production, the energy, right? When we look at a study that we did, identified Ghana as the cost of doing business is increasingly going up high, above the African average. And now it's turning a lot of investment attention to neighboring countries like Cote d'Ivoire. It looks like we are still living in our historical past. We still not come into terms with our realities. How do we minimize the cost of doing business? The licensing regime. How do we stop that one size fits all? The fact that an annual renewal works in a certain industry does not mean it works in another industry. How do we invest in research and innovation, right? For instance, because the study that we did, we did a case study, and one thing we identified, or four main things, let me just use it to wrap up my point, was one, commitment to R&D. You realize that all the countries that are doing very well in translating their resource wealth is that they've prioritized research and innovation, right? Because it's through research and innovation that you'll be able to support your industries in the very area where you have great comparative and competitive advantage in. The other bit is also the deliberate efforts to technology transfer. I've already mentioned the fact that our local content is fixated on ownership. How do we adjust it to look more at knowledge transfer? Why? Because there was that deliberate intention. Why? Because there was that deliberate intention. They have a catalog of industrial skills and technology that is revised over time, looking at what kind of skills that is revised over time, looking at what kind of skill set do we need at this point in time to develop our industry? And when they do that, they now try to do external partnership for that particular skill set to ensure that there's that skills transfer. So it's not about, oh, we want to do technology transfer, so it's wholesale. There is that deliberate, that intentionality. The other bit is also on the incentivization, that's having a more targeted incentive approach. I think that's a problem not just for the mining sector, not to criticize. I think that's a problem not just for the mining sector, not to criticize guys, but I think when government was introducing even the free SHS, that conversation came up. How do we have it in a more targeted approach? I think it's something that we struggle with as a country. Instead of saying that all mining inputs or this kind of mining input enjoy this kind of tax exemption, can we look at mining companies that are actually doing the bidding of promoting tech transfer, promoting side linkages, support and all the, and rather give them those incentives as a way of encouraging them? My last point would be something that we rarely talk about, and I was very excited when Doc in his presentation mentioned it. The fiscal take, I will still come back to it. It's also a form of value retention, because whilst we agree that the sole responsibility of development rests with government, government needs the money to develop. But the question is that if the responsibility for fiscal contribution is resting with just one side of the divide, then there are a lot of fiscal leakages. Now, through Gold Board, we've seen what we've always suspected has been documented, that ASM is actually producing more than the large-scale sector. Engineers said 2025 royalties from ASM was zero. I'm coming to add to it that I've been searching in the last 6 months to GRA. I even, to the extent of sending an RTI request to the Minerals Commission. The Minerals Commission could not provide any data to show that this is the fiscal contribution of ASM, although the law enjoins that. I think sometimes the framers of the law, it's not for nothing that they know that GRA is the revenue collection agency. And yet in one of the regulations, I've forgotten the airline, it enjoins the Minerals Commission to actually receive payment detail, fiscal payment of ASM. I believe that in the minds of the framers of that regulation is to serve as an enabler, such that maybe during licensing renewal, you will have to show your certificate, your tax certificate or something like that as a way of creating that institutional coordination between the GRA and MINCOM. But unfortunately, MINCOM could not provide me. I'm still looking. I've even been to the chamber.
But I'm not sure the chamber can help you.
Yes, I'm looking. So it means that it doesn't exist. If it exists somewhere, somebody should correct me. I need that data.
The new mining airline, they're paying 2% royalty.
Yeah, on getting proper data to support GRA to be able to accurately do proper fiscal assessment and collect the money for development.
All right. I think, Mabel, thanks so much. Very insightful additions. I think, Ken, you'd have to share where you got the information from with Mabel. All right. So I think I'll just do a final question, and then I'll ask the audience to also, if you have any specific questions. I know time is far spent. So, but the final question I just want to put across, and it's common. What one policy change do we want to see, in the Ghana mining industry? And what role does your sector or your part of the ecosystem, play in that? What single over the next, say, 12 months? Because we've actually focused on the fact that, yes, it's not just a fiscal space. Clearly, there is the input side, and in fact, the downstream side to listening to Gold Board, that we need to look at if we are going to actually maximize value from the mining industry. So what one policy shift would we like to see, and what role will each of the parties play in it? I think I'll just for 30 seconds, and then we'll open it up quickly before we wrap up.
Please.
Absolutely, Ken. I think, and you're absolutely right. Anybody who scans the multinationals listed in Ghana, you would notice that over the past 1 week, on average, all of them have lost at least 10% in share price and market cap. And if you speak with the investors, they will tell you there's too much risk in Ghana now. So that's a solid point you've made. Thank you. Sam.
Yeah, Ken, I think you're becoming a good mining engineer.
So don't forget, I'm also not a mining engineer.
But do you realize that even though government has dropped the exploration incentive that they've given, but we're not seeing a lot of exploration because people are looking at the certainty. And I'm surprised Ghana should beat almost all West African countries, especially even in Africa, for exploration. Because Ghana, the last time I was saying that if you look at our gold density, okay, as of 2024, if you take gold density per square kilometer of a country, Ghana was topping in the whole world, 19 ounces per square kilometer. In fact, 2025 data, because we increase in our output is sitting around 21 ounces per square kilometer. The next person, who is China, and China is the largest gold producer in the world, sits about 1.62 ounces per square kilometer. The irony of the thing is that it means that our resource density here, the probability of discovering gold in Ghana is high. So if we are talking about the global scheme, Ghana is, no wonder it's called Gold Coast, because your probability of getting discovery is high. And Professor Kuma taught me in school, Exploration 101, where there is a mine, you increase your probability of discovery. That's what we do. Because you look at Obuasi is here, Asanko is here, the chances that we are mining the same belt. So if I go and drill there, I'm going to discover. So why are we not getting a lot of that investment coming into exploration? It's because investors see that as risky. He's not just looking at, he's looking at that 10 years. Who is going to change what again? And what am I going to get? The other point, so I want to see those sort of policy sensitivity happen so that we are able to, not only for foreign investment, but even for Ghanaians, because I'm not going to put my money in when policies can be taken, can be brought on board that takes more value from me. So that's then the other thing that I want to touch on quickly is the R&D aspect. It's critical. It's very critical. BHP, Roy Tinto, in those days, they used to have R&D departments. And I remember when I was with BHP, big department that does R&D. What have they done? They've outsourced it to the universities. University of Queensland, University of Adelaide. They give them a lot of money for them to do R&D on their behalf instead of their owning. We don't have such things. That's why I was talking about when I did my lecture in UMAT that we need to be able to situate UMAT as a center for what? Mineral Resource Research Institute in Ghana. If we do that, it helps us. We should use the gold to be able to bring this sort of things to, because the last time I did a research and realized that Facebook market capital is higher than the top 10 not gold mining companies, their working capital. Their market capital. If you combine all mining companies, the top 10 top 20 mining companies in the world, their market capital combined is like Facebook. So it tells you that this technology base, when we go into IT, when we go into research and development, what can our students be doing in terms of solving problems using AI? The minds we need to be ahead of this game, because otherwise others will develop it and we'll go and buy it. What are we doing around? So I want to see policies around that. How do we use this sort of money we're getting from the mineral resources to be able to fund some of this policy? And then the cost of doing business. And when we talk about cost, Ken mentioned that the only way a mining company picks more people is when we expand. And when we talk about expansion, there are two ways of expanding. The one is grade. When you get good grades, you can get more gold for the same throughput. But if you are not doing exploration, you can't discover that high grade. So grade is not a big issue about expansion. The bigger one is throughput. How do you expand your throughput? And the only way we expand throughput is when our cost is down. When we can see that there is cost certainty around some of the things that we do. And that means that translates into we picking more people. If we expand, we pick more people. If I look at the way we operate, our cost keeps on going high. I was telling one of the policy or regulators that, you see, we are not against sliding scale, not at all. We think it's a good philosophy. But when you do it and the cost goes up, I can tell you 2-3 years down the line, and we've seen it, go and look at the data. Anytime gold goes up, the next 3-4 years stays there about 3-4 years, 5 years, maximum 5 years, it starts coming down. The fifth year, mining companies start doing retrenchment because the cost has gone up and we are competing with other people on the stock market. And what's an investor looking for? He's looking for margins. So the person whose cost, if you take your cost from the gold price, the margin that you're creating, that's where I go and put my money to get more margin from. So in order for us to scale down and lose weight, what do? We need to recalibrate ourselves by doing what? Improvement initiative, retrenchment start all over the place. So the best place to start when gold price goes up, I understand that we need to balance it, but raising fiscal policy is in the short term. The question we should be asking or sitting with the mining companies is that how do we help you expand? How do we help you to bring more production on board? This is the time for us to be investing, not the time for people to be keeping the money and making decisions otherwise and saying that I'm not going to invest. This is the time for mining companies to say, okay, I need to turn on another processing plant because cost is up. I can bring this processing stream online. That, for me, is the bigger discussion. That's more sustainable. That's what government should. I want to see policies around that. That's rather stimulate that expansion initiative than just fiscal aspect. Thanks.
All right, thanks. I think you've raised a number of very interesting things. I mean, even on the issue of research, I know the Chamber funds a number of the PhD research work at UMAT through the Tertiary Education Fund, which we've got. So I think we will just need to scale that up some more to materially impact the industry. Thanks. All right. Gold Coast Refinery. Any final policy thing you want to see and what will be played?
Thank you, Engineer Fred. So I think what I'm listening across panelists is more of a wake-up call to government. And I want to emphasize again, across West Africa, our production level possibly over 170 for 2025, but with confirmed figures of 2024, countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, even Guinea produced 68 tons in 2024. Nobody would have thought of Guinea 10 years ago. Ivory Coast, just round the corner, 58 tons in 2024. These are not figures we are not used to just, let me say, 7 years ago. So it tells you that these countries are coming up. Now, whether for good purposes or an advantageous position for them, these are French-speaking countries that can easily coordinate themselves very well. And we are the only West African country sitting in the middle, English-speaking country sitting in the middle and the leading gold producer. But then we sit in the top 10, but soon after are these entities. So it's a wake-up call for us to look at policy and initiatives that actually solidify us. We need to understand that in every market, there is a supply side and the demand side. Unfortunately for us, we are not sitting much on the demand side. I mean, how many of us sitting here have gold on, for example? How many of us have bought into Bank of Ghana gold coins as an investment, for example? But then we are not the Indians that actually, strong in jewelry, nor the Arabs. We are sitting on the supply side. And there's a lot we can do on the supply side that actually strengthen our position. Starting off with refinery, looking at the mining and the mining production itself and the supply chain around that. That is very important. But then today, you look at gold and you look at beyond jewelry. Gold is an investment instrument. The key consumption of gold, you are looking at jewelry, you are looking at technology, you are looking at government, reserve banks, reserves, and then investment. If you look at the trajectory, investment is the growth area. From 2018 till now, we've seen investment, gold as an investment instrument growing significantly. Jewelry, possibly because of the increasing price of gold, actually saw a decline. But then, since investment is what is driving gold consumption, and we sitting on the supply side, that is where we can actually influence market by ensuring that we've organized our supply sector. We've not domestication, but we've actually taken much control in terms of the entire process, not from an ownership perspective.
Okay.
I'm signaling that warning about ownership because to me, technology is different from technical know-how. By virtue of the fact that we are an industry that is well matured over 30 years, we have technical expertise. So we have some technical know-how, but we don't have technology. And it's important that as we try to go deeper in terms of ownership, we should seek a balance between technical know-how and technology so that we don't lose it. But then organizing ourselves so that we are stronger on the supply side is very important. Having our gold accredited before it's put on the market, ensuring that the supply chain initiatives are actually developed. It's not enough saying that I wish I could buy crucibles in Ghana, but there should be that initiative that sets up a business that actually produces crucibles. Today, I'm able to import crucibles from South Africa only because South Africa has built that industrial base and the supply chain for it. Other than that, crucibles would have been coming from Italy, for example. So we need to consciously look at what we can do on the supply side to strengthen our position in the market.
Okay, thanks so much. Mabel.
So I will just take it up from where from the supply side, we also have the advantage of AFTA. So
the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Okay, sure. Okay.
So we should not just be looking inwards. We have to have a broader perspective of things and not limit ourselves in terms of the market. Because by tapping into regional market, that's where we are able to even scale up and take advantage of economies of scale and be able to produce at competitive cost. Of course, it's not straightforward, but maybe we discuss that at another platform. But this is something that we also have to look at when we are talking about local manufacturing and all that, that we should not, whether from government or from businesses, just be looking at the local market. We have a bigger market. From every indication shows that a lot of our resource producers are importing from outside the country. We can take the lead by being the supply hub for other resource manufacturing resource producing economies. Another bit I will still come back to my fiscal issue is the revenue utilization perspective. If we want to also retain value, it also depends on what are we investing our revenues in, because the mining are paying their revenues. I want to even go to the ASN, the little that we are able to mobilize. What are we investing them in? Again, coming from an energy policy think tank, I will use the petroleum sector as an example. Engineer mentioned it. We have the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Now, as a research-based organization at ASN, each time you are doing work on petroleum, it's easier because you are able to track the money. You are able to trace what petroleum revenues, albeit just a decade old, you are able to track what the socio-economic impact on the economy, because the law has been designed such that government cannot just take petroleum funds and use it as a wage, use it to pay salaries. You can't do that. Anyone can sue you for that. But in the minerals, each time I'm doing a study on the minerals, when I get there, I'm stuck. It's so difficult because the best you can get is the royalties, and that one we track it to MDF because you cannot. The law looks only at the allocation. It's not looking at the utilization. How do we come up with a holistic revenue management act? That is not just royalty based, but looking at everything mineral royalties, right? That guides the utilization of royalties so that we are able to measure that these are the contribution of fiscal revenues from the mineral sector. So that it makes it easier for citizens to see that, okay, we've been mining for centuries, over a century or so. These investments are coming from our mining sector. As it stands now, it's difficult to see. It takes somebody to be within the industry. And even that, because everything just goes to the consolidated fund and
it's a black box. You can't tell what happens after that. Yeah.
Then of course I'll speak a lot about our local content policy. I won't erase the point. the fact that we have to move from ownership perspective to how do we, even if we are doing ownership, it should be ownership across the chain, not just ownership of a mine. Otherwise, we ignore the benefits from the high economic value aspects of the chain. Then another bit is the fiscal compliance. Our gold board here and our minerals commission, if next year we are meeting to discuss that we don't want to see zero royalties. Whilst we know that royalty collection is not the responsibility of Maincom and gold board, we believe that strong institutional interconnectedness can help support GRA to enforce such fiscal compliance. We've talked about education. If we have proper industrial policy that links various sectors, including education, then we will know the kind of skill to build in our schools, even vocational schools, not universities, even vocational training. We'll be able to tailor them in that perspective. They need to diversify, I'll end with this, need to diversify investment attractiveness. Many times at mining in Daba and the one at Canada was
PDAC.
Yes, the focus is on E&P companies. Meanwhile, we come back home and we are talking about building value chain, moving up the chain. Meanwhile, when we get to pitch around investors, the focus is on our geological finding. This year, I had the honor of hosting the Ghana's country case at Cape Town. And the presentation, great presentation from Ghana. But the focus is all on our goal. We have goal. We have it. That's our goal. We were not pitching the level of even infrastructure that we have, or even the policy environment we are putting in place to ensure that we are building an infrastructure reliability to reduce the cost of doing business, creating a more investment-friendly. Doug has talked about the regulatory certainty and the issue of transparency. That one, it goes both with both government and the industry. I see my time is up. Let me end this. Because in the industry, government has to be more transparent. It's not just about putting the law there. If you say the law is A, if I look at it and I see A, engineer Takuma looks at it, you should see A as fault. You shouldn't, or if government is interpreting, if I come, sorry, if I go to Theo and he tells me it means A, when engineer goes to him, he should still say A. That's the fiscal transparency and regulatory certainty. From the industry side, I believe that companies can do better in terms of their level of public relationship. Many times, it's like the chamber is doing a lot of that job, but within the context where we are and the communities where companies are operating, the chamber is not very popular. The company they know is the Newmont. So if you have a chamber of mines talking to the person, it does not sink deep compared to Newmont himself doing that. And I believe that is an opportunity to even get a lot more of your social license than even the social interventions. Because people want to feel that the company respects me. If I send a grievance mechanism, do I even receive a call to say, we've received your complaint, we are working on it, expect response in 2 weeks? Just that call alone, you got the heart of a community person. If a civil society member writes to you a letter, do you even respond? I've done with many of them, they don't even acknowledge it. Let's change. That's a way of also getting socializing. We should also take advantage of corporate social responsibility, situate it within a broader development framework. Instead of, we spend so much, but you see that it's project-based. How do we integrate it in a broader development framework so that they are linked and empowering livelihoods across the community?
Okay, thanks, Mabel. Theo? I think everything.
They've said everything. We say you do all, right? Yes, well,
I was going to say everything lands on policy.
Oh no! Everything has been said. I think for me and for us, as a Ministry of Finance this morning, it was really to come and listen. So all I would say is that we hear you.
Okay.
We take your suggestions and the reforms. I will take that to the bosses at the top, and then we'll keep working on that. But like I said, we want to work with you. We want an industry that works for Ghanaians, an industry that also works for your shareholders. The specifics around that, we can always sit around the table and discuss. And that includes, other issues to do with the transfer pricing issues and all of that. But yes, it's good feedback. We'll take it up the food chain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I still have time for one or two questions? I do. Okay, so I think we'll turn to the audience now, please. If anyone has a question, please. Okay, I can see a hand. Is there a microphone we can send across? And please tell us who you are and who specifically your question is directed to. Thank you.
I'm Hubert Chamens. I'm Managing Director of Jack Mining Limited Company. I have some concerns for the panelists. The first one is, for my view, I think Ghana should focus on tokenization instead of LPMA license, because most of our gold is coming from Kahara nations and the Moshi land. And then getting, as a small scale miner, getting license is also difficult now. So how can they do traceability, proper traceability for the LPMA? So once maybe Gold Coast has RJC license, other refinery can also go for the RJC license instead of LPMA. Because I was supplying a refinery, when they take 5 grams of the gold you have supplied, the technology will show them exact location you mine the gold. So in case Gold Board source gold, which most of the gold will come from Kahara nations, and they use that technology, what would be their concern of those regulators? And then coming back also to Madam, the reason why they are finding it difficult to get the information of how much taxes ASN has paid is also an issue between we, the miners, and the Minerals Commission and the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Difficult to get your license signed. And then by the time your license is signed, the land is already finished.
So the mining is done, right?
Yeah. So where are you going to mine again to get the exact answers or that to show that you have had to pay this kind of access? So the regulators and the policymakers, the theory part is different from what is happening on the ground. Far different. So you have to help those. We are doing our best, our penny, to make the industry successful. But there's a vast difference between getting your license and what is happening on the ground at the moment.
All right. Thank you. So I believe that's for the ASM or small skill sector. Thank you very much, Hubert. Can we have one or two more then, so that we take it all in one go, and that will be it? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Kofi Ahovi. I work with Business Week. From where I sit, I see that government wants to get as much money as possible from the industry, and maybe chop, for lack of a better word. But in Australia, they have like 7-year strategic development plan for the industry. In the US, I think they want to secure as much mineral as possible for defense and advanced technology as well as clean energy. I want to know what Ghana's own is. Thank you.
Okay, so you're talking about mining or minerals
Policy direction.
There was a green energy, green minerals policy back then. I'm not too sure where that is. I'm not trying to answer your question, but the right people to deal with your question are not on this panel. So, but thanks. Any final?
Yes, my name is Ahmed Nato. I work with the Chamber of Mines. You have okay. Minerals Commission wants to ask a question, but
Minerals
after
Commission.
me.
Oh, you want to answer? Oh, sorry.
My question is, as the speakers were giving their remarks, I want to find out what is government doing to help sure that the pie is expanded so that we can get more. Rather than saying that the little pie that you have, bring it and give me, the one you are giving me is small, let me take a larger share. In other countries, we know that they are providing incentives now that the gold price is high for people to expand. Like Mr. Pobi said, when you expand, then you employ more. But in Ghana, I see that they are rather trying to take the little that we have instead of helping companies to expand. What is the Minister of Finance or government doing to make sure that mining companies stay sustainable and grow?
Okay. All right. Thanks. I wasn't aware Mincom was here, so I'm sure they will. And I think Mincom can deal with the mineral policy question or critical minerals policy, etc. that was raised. Thank you. And then I can provide some answer to that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to provide some information. When CEO engineer was talking about contribution of the small scale in terms of the fiscal, you mentioned they pay a little less than $1 million Ghana cedis. I represent the commission on the EITI platform. I think the last report, we did some work around the contribution of the small scale sector. Sorry about that. Okay. What we realized was that from the GRA point of view, they are overly focused on the large scale mining companies, and they have dedicated decks for tracking what they pay in terms of their fiscal, in terms of the taxes and all the others. However, what the small scale guys pay are located at the district, and they are not isolated as revenue coming from the small scale. They are commingled with whatever the district or the tax-paying officer accounts for. So it was one of the issues that led to we not being able to actually trace exactly how much the small scale sector is bringing in terms of the tax revenue. And I think we've raised it with the GRA folks, and my understanding is that GRA now have a department solely for extractive, and they are trying to recalibrate and look at properly accounting for what all the players in terms of the small scale and the large scale players contribute in terms of their tax obligation. I think the issue about what government is doing, Dr. Achiampo, made a point that government is willing to engage in terms of how can we, what will we do collectively in supporting industry so that with the current price window, we are able to, expand the benefits in terms of what incentive do we need to give to industry to upscale their outputs. And also, once you upscale, the other benefit that comes with it will also expand. So as Dr. Achiampo has said, industry can come to the table and government is willing to engage constructively for mutual benefits.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Will you address the energy, critical minerals, defense question that was asked from a government policy perspective?
What I can say, with the new mining bill that government is considering, there's a focus on strategic minerals, of which critical minerals are a part of it, and what incentives that needs to be provided so that those sectors can be developed.
Okay. All right. I think we'll ask Richard to deal with the gold board question. Thanks.
Okay. So, international standards exist for several benefits. And if you look at the gold trading sector, LBMA has become an anchor for global gold trading, and compliance with LBMA standards are non-negotiable if you want to derive full value from global gold trading. So we consider LBMA standards and its allied compliance regimes around responsible sourcing, OECD guidance on that as critical, because our current state of mining and gold trading is not in compliance with those standards. And they are not the desirable states of mining, whether you want to look at it from a national point of view. So it is for that reason that one of the mandates the gold board has been given is to support the formalization of the AMSM sector. So we have begun working with the Ministry for Lands and Natural Resources and its allied agencies like MINCOM and the Responsible Mining, Community Mining Project to provide initiatives of formalizing that sector and ensuring that they are complying with these standards. Largely, we also believe strongly that one of the key things we have to do, which we are doing, is providing the traceability solution to help us to be able to track and trace the gold that we purchase from the ASM sector, from the mine to the refineries, or ultimately to the gold buyers. And all these things will happen with time. And by way of update, currently we are at the advanced stage of the national competitive tendering process that the gold board had rolled out to procure that nationwide solution that can help us do that. What we think the benefit will largely be the opportunity for us to be able to identify who we are buying from, and also be able to provide targeted intervention for those who are not complying with the standards that we expect them to comply with, and ultimately be able to bring all the ASM gold that we aggregate into the formal trading structure globally. And we understand from our conversation with LBMA and other stakeholders that there is a need for all of us to work together, because we have shown that we have shown that ASM outputs now has outweighed, or there's record to show that we are getting more gold from that ASM sector. So what it means is that there's an opportunity for us to implement the right frameworks for mining, for sourcing, and being able to track that gold so that we can add that to what we get from the large scale sector and be able to derive full benefit from all the gold output that we produce. So yes, there may be concerns as to we also developing our own standards, but some of these global standards are very critical for our full participation in the global gold market.
Okay, thank you. I think Your Majesty, Ojiawo, wants to make a comment. I'm sure give us a community perspective on all of these as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this forum, I learn, forms part of the Chamber's stakeholder engagement efforts to promote informed dialogue on strategic issues affecting Ghana's mining sector, which will focus on strategic mining, value retention, and development to maximize the value derived from Ghana's mining resources and strengthen the sector's contribution to the national development. Indeed, the emphasis is on value retention and how it affects the development of this country. I'm excited to be part of this forum, and I'm so happy. I've learned a lot today. So how do we achieve value retention and development? It appears to me that from the discussions, government which formulates the policies, including Minerals Commission, EPA, and other groups, including Gold Board, they don't spread out to reach out to Nananum and to even the industry players before some of the policies are implemented. Because Theo and the gentleman who just spoke, they're always saying that our doors are open. Our doors are open for you to come. You design the policies, invite them, interact with them, find out what is going on, what are the best practices that we can follow to enable us increase the value to help the development of this country. Having said this, let me also add this one. There is the need to implement joint coordination and oversight of mining operations by state organizations, I've mentioned some of them, and Nananum, who are owners of customary lands as stated in the 1992 Constitution. Almost, I am yet to be told which LI involves Nananum. Nananum are not considered at all, even though we own the land. And we are never consulted too. That is, those constitutional provisions that mandate state institutions to be responsible for minerals and mining should be read in conjunction with other provisions on the role of traditional authorities in the management of customary lands for mining. This indicates a clear joint management arrangement, that is, active involvement of Nananum, the state, and indeed the mining companies as well. Let me also come to the social environment and safeguards. What are the social and environmental safeguards or standards guiding the operations of mining companies in Ghana? Who set those standards? Who monitors compliance, especially the social ones? To what extent are the traditional leadership or owners and local communities get involved at their application and implementation? Are local communities aware that mining operations such like land-based investments require more than the application of national laws? In other words, apart from the national laws, what about the international laws that affect the operations? How do we get to know about them? That provide detailed framework, detailed for handling impactful local level education, e.g. in handling of, for example, when mining companies come to our land, how do they provide beehives? What about ant hills, streams, sacred groves, water bodies, fauna and flora, reclamation and crop compensation, deprivation of land use, pollution, polluter pays principle, resettlement, local employment, and training. The point I'm making is that if we are talking about value, these are all values. So Nananum and indeed the communities should also be considered. Let us know what is worrying them. Otherwise, most of the time, the communities rise to the mining companies and do a lot of complaints. Meanwhile, the laws are always made by the government and parliament, which also refuses to engage Nananum. What I have heard here is that the problems that are inhibiting the expansion of the mining industry, most of them come from government policies. Even though the minerals are invested in the president, Nananum have the surface right. We have the surface right. Even the death has not been determined. The death of the surface right has not been determined. So I don't see how you can engage mining companies without involving Nananum and the owners. Again, I have also heard that if we can develop research, and I'm happy we have representative from University of Mines here in the person of Professor Kuma. They are doing marvelous job. And what sort of assistance is government giving to these universities which are helping the industry? When you get the money, how is the money spent? If indeed we want to have value and expand the industry, then of course we should be looking at some of these things. One, how do the communities also benefit? Some of our things that the era where we had $1 per ounce should not be considered any longer. At least it should be $2 per ounce. Some of us are also demanding that 3% of the gross revenue of all mining companies should be deducted, paid into a fund, to be administered by the landowner, the assembly, and indeed the mining companies for local development. Why do I say this? Sometimes they say, yes, $1 per ounce, and again, at the end of the year, a certain percentage of the profit declared. But because the communities cannot enforce these things, the companies also don't pay. And so when you go to the mining areas, you realize that even though they are the golden hens laying the golden egg, there's no development. I come from Bibiani and Yanso, Bekwai district. Mining in Bibiani started in 1890. Then 1927, Bibiani Limited took over. And so from 1927, gold has been mined. So we are talking about 100 years. Go to Awaso, we are talking about gold now, but go to Awaso right now, where bauxite has been mined for the past 86 years. The streets are not even tied. Nothing to show for it. So if indeed we want value retention and development, even though we are practicing a unity form of government, if attention is not paid to the local areas where the resources are obtained, there will be problem. If care is not taken, pretty soon, there will be upheaval in all these areas. So at this forum, we have government agencies. It's unfortunate that we don't have a minister or director of a ministry here. But I believe they have their reps here. We want to tell them that yes, we say the minerals and the oil belong to the country, but they are being exploited from specific areas. And those people should also benefit from the natural resource. It shouldn't be a curse for a natural resource to be discovered in an area to affect the people. They should benefit from it. If this country were not a unitary form of government, then of course, my state will be earning a certain percentage from the resource. So the man from the Ministry of Finance, you said you go and deliver whatever you have heard here to your boss. What we are telling them is that Nanano are not happy. We own the land. We own also the resources. You have a tenure, or the politicians have a tenure. We don't have a tenure. I have been on my stool for the past 38 years, so I have seen several governments pass through my hands. If we were all engaged, then a new government coming in to change some of these rules will not be as easy as that. But we will definitely draw the attention to the fact that why do you want to change this particular regulation? We are pleading with you. Let us give as much incentives as possible to the mining companies so that they can also give us more. I served on the board of GMPC, and so I'll listen attentively to what the lady was saying. The problem with Ghana is that we are always looking at the revenue side. When Senegal and others were taking about 7%, 8%, and 10%, we were asking for 10%, 15% carry interest. ExxonMobil, when they came here and were going to drill oil 4,000 meters down, we give them all sorts of frustrations. So what we are saying is that, yes, if gold is found in an area and we have a mining company, let us engage them, listen to them, and make sure that we encourage them also to produce and engage our people. Finally, how do our people also benefit? I am pleading to the mining companies. When you open up for employment, people come in and we tell our local people that you don't have this experience, you don't have that experience. How do they get the experience? Please establish training centers within the mining area, and the other mining companies together with the universities will come in to help so that BBNE, which has done mining for the last 100 years, will have a cream of experts from the BBN area. Unfortunately, because of this lack of a training center, we don't have them. And 6 years ago, I personally approached Professor Kuma, and they established a learning center at BBN. Right now, people are being trained in drilling, in welding and fabrication, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the areas that will help the community also to be effective and to be productive in achieving our value retention and development. The development, let me come and talk about the 8% that we are talking about. When I was coming here, I thought it was 10%, but it's not 8%. Let's take it that in a month, BBN Gold Mines pays $1 million as royalty. 8% of 1 million is how much? I think it's 80,000.
80,000, yeah.
Then office administrator of freelance takes 10% of that. That's how much? 8,000, right?
Yeah, 72 left.
So we are left with 72,000.
Yeah.
The assembly takes 39,000. The assembly takes 55%, and that gives us 39,600. So we are left with $32,400. $32,400. In BBN, for example, 3 stools share this money, and each one of them gets 10,800. So when people start talking, Nananum take royalty, Nananum do this, and this royalty is not for Nana. 20% of it goes to the stools. 25%. So the 25% goes to the stools, and 20% to the traditional or the traditional council. I am using this forum to tell the minister engage Nananum, we are demanding 30% of this figure. That is what is happening in Nigeria. In Congo, it's 35%. When you go to Nevada, nobody takes royalties from anybody. They own everything. Government taxes them. And that is why an arid country like that is very, very resourceful. We are not demanding that we should give all the value to our respective areas. We need to be taxed. But what we are saying is that the 8% allocated to the areas is woefully inadequate, and it should be increased to 30%. We are here talking about value retention and development. We don't want to continue to harass the mining companies, because that is where we send our frustrations. Hold ups, we sit in, and so on and so forth. Government should send back some of the revenue to develop those areas. So the emphasis here is that 30% should be retained there and should be managed not only by the landowner, but by the landowner, the assembly, and of course, the mining company. And this money should be paid directly into their fund. The 8% you are talking about, even before the 32,000 gets to the traditional council, you have to go begging for come. And we even don't know where to go. As I speak, this whole year, not a dime has been paid to Sefiamianto Traditional Council, even though we have Chirano Gold Mines, Bibiani Gold Mines, and then Ghana Bauxite and Quantry, 4 mining companies in my area. What we have received is rent. So who is not rent? Yes, so who is keeping the money? We don't want to give trouble on unnecessary wahala to the mining companies. Let me use this opportunity also to thank Asante Gold, Bibiani Gold Mines for constructing a first-class resettlement. We thank you very much, and we hope to invite all of you when we are giving the houses to the owners. Thank you very much. I'm excited. You have opened my eyes, and I'm going to share what I've learned here with my fellow chiefs in my areas. And that's it. So the fight will now start from here. Thank you. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Ojiaho. We are grateful for the great insights and words of wisdom that you've shared with us. I think, Ahmed, I can wrap up now. Ojiaho has spoken, so I don't believe anybody can say anything anymore. Yes. So I think he actually summarized most of the things for me. So the critical role of Nananum is something that should be looked at, especially in the policy space as we look at designing the ecosystem of mining going forward. We've spoken about policy certainty and policy attractiveness when it comes to investment, whether local or foreign. And a key point that's been raised, if we want to focus on the input side of the industry, which is where the bulk of the expenditure goes, is the need for a more integrated and comprehensive industrial policy, not just on the mining side, but across industry in Ghana with clear linkages to the other industries. Great debate on local ownership and whether that's the key or not. You know, and I think we other models, you look at the Botswana models where there are joint ventures and all of that, should be things we consider going forward. Research and development, I think that was mentioned countlessly. where we need to start looking at, maybe investing a lot more in that space so that you put something out there that is of value, not just to the Ghana mining space, but to the broader global industry. So I'd like to thank the panelists very much for the discussion, starting from my extreme left, Theo Champo, advisor to the Minister of Finance. Thank you so much. Mabel Akwe, Mrs. Mabel Akwe from ASEP. Thanks so much. Emmanuel Osefri Emensa, who is the Group Chief Financial Officer of Gold Coast Refinery. We're grateful. Mr. Sampo B, MD of Anglo Gold Ashanti, Obuasi Mine. Thanks. Dr. Ken Ashigbe, our own chief servant, right, of the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and Mr. Richard Nunekpeku, who is the Deputy CEO of the Ghana Gold Board. And of course, you audience, for your patience and for being part of this. Ojiaho, once again, we want to place on record our gratitude to you for coming to chair this event for us and for the guidance you've given all of us. Please join me in applauding the panelists for okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the panelists and the moderator will take a group shot for posterity. So, with all due respect, after Nana Ojaho, please, with all due respect, if you could join us for the picture. Paparazzi, please pave way for Nana to pass. Paparazzi, yes. Please, yeah, okay. All set? Okay. Please, I'm getting some pushback. The ladies want the lady to be in the middle. Women in mining. Be with Nana. It's a better pose. Yeah, so let's use this picture. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So, with this, we have come to the end of today's proceedings. Lunch is served. We'll share coupons for lunch. We'll share the coupons for lunch, and you can stay and join us for lunch. Thank you so much. Like I said, this is a series of programs. We'll do more in all the regions as well. Thank you for joining us today.
To the University of Mines and Technology. They took loan, yes. And it got to a time they were not getting the loan again. So I had to come in and do something. So I was applying for several scholarships, GMPC, Gets Fund, and other scholarships. And then I also applied for the Ghana Chamber of Mines, and then my breakthrough came in. I was very happy to get the scholarship because it has lessened the burden on my parents.
I'm working on whole body vibration exposures that earth moving equipment operators are exposed to. In our part of the world, a few preliminary research show that although we have a lot of whole body vibration assessments studies elsewhere, we have just one empirical study in the whole of Africa. And then that is very alarming, looking at Ghana's contribution to mine. I applied because I knew that one, the funds could help enlarge the scope of my work, and also to help gain access, very easy access into the mines. I'm working on whole body vibration exposures that's my work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced soft measurement technique. That is basically has to do with an hybrid artificial intelligence method that can help our metallurgists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase good recovery at the CIF. As at the time I was given admission to come and pursue my PhD studies, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced soft measurement technique. That is basically has to do with an hybrid artificial intelligence method that can help our metallurgists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase good recovery at the CIF. As at the time I was given admission to come and pursue my PhD studies, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced soft measurement technique. That is basically has to do with an hybrid artificial intelligence method that can help our metallurgists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase good recovery at the CIF. As at the time I was given admission to come and pursue my PhD studies, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced soft measurement technique. That is basically has to do with an hybrid artificial intelligence method that can help our metallurgists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase good recovery at the CIF. As at the time I was given admission to come and pursue my PhD studies, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced cost measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with a hybrid actual intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then advanced operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was doing admission to kind of pursue my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced cost measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with a hybrid actual intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then advanced operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was doing admission to kind of pursue my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced cost measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with a hybrid actual intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then advanced operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was doing admission to kind of pursue my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced cost measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with a hybrid actual intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then advanced operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was doing admission to kind of pursue my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Chamber of Mines Tertiary Education Fund. is basically on how to predict goal leading recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come up with advanced stock measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with hybrid actual intelligence methods that can help our methodologists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase those recovery that is here. Over the time I was doing admission kind of to see my PhD study, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict goal leading recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced stock measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with hybrid actual intelligence methods that can help our methodologists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase those recovery that is here. Over the time I was doing admission kind of to see my PhD study, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict goal leading recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced stock measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with hybrid actual intelligence methods that can help our methodologists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase those recovery that is here. Over the time I was doing admission kind of to see my PhD study, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict goal leading recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced stock measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with hybrid actual intelligence methods that can help our methodologists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase those recovery that is here. Over the time I was doing admission kind of to see my PhD study, it was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict goal leading recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with advanced stock measurement techniques. That is basically has to do with hybrid actual intelligence methods that can help our methodologists and then our plant operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase those recovery that is here. Over the time I was doing admission coming to see my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced cost measurement technique. That is basically has to do with a hybrid axial intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then appliance operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was giving admission coming to see my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced cost measurement technique. That is basically has to do with a hybrid axial intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then appliance operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was giving admission coming to see my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced cost measurement technique. That is basically has to do with a hybrid axial intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then appliance operators to come out with an optimal and controlled strategy that can help them increase gold recovery at the field. Over the time, I was giving admission coming to see my PhD study. It was kind of very difficult for me in terms of finances. So in total, I received $5,000 from the Ghana Bureau of Mines Special Education Fund. My work is basically on how to predict gold leaching recovery. And with this one, I'm looking at how to come out with an advanced cost measurement technique. That is basically has to do with a hybrid axial intelligence method that can help our methodologists and then appliance operators to come out with an optimal and controlled